Hi, my name is Pricilla Vargas. I'm 15 years old and I first attended Mid-Atlantic Youth Conference 2 years ago. At that conference, I made many decisions, and one of them was to leave old friends and make new ones. But that testimony begins much earlier than that. I was not born in a Christian home, and my parents were not married. I had an older sister, and I was 3, and I had a younger brother. At this time in my life, things were very hard. My dad was a drunk, and he was very violent to me, my siblings, and even my mom. I remember at times my dad would beat my mom so bad she would be sent to the hospital. Eventually, my older sister got adopted, which left me taking care of my little brother and when my parents were not home, which was very frequent. Many times my dad would come home drunk and I would go hide in a closet because I knew he would get very violent when he was drunk. Times like this in my life made me feel so alone. I also remember at times my mom and dad were not home. I would go to a park down the street and play in a sandbox and talk to ants as if they could hear me because I had no one to talk to. I vividly remember going home one day from a park a few months after my little sister was born. When I got home, my parents were arguing and there was broken glass all over the kitchen. So I ran to our neighbor's house and called 911. When I got back home to get Dan, my little brother, my dad had pushed my mom into a dresser, and the dresser fell on my baby sister while she was in her car seat. My dad had broken her arm. At this moment, I was terrified and I did not feel safe anymore. December 2006, at the age of 4, I remember waking up and social services took us away. I was so upset and cried because even though my life was bad, my parents were still my parents and I didn't want to leave. Me and my little brother and my baby sister went to stay with our aunt for a while. I felt happier than I had ever felt when I was living with her. She fed me, took care of me, and loved me as if I was her own. But because my aunt already had a son to take care of, and me and my 2 other siblings, she got very overwhelmed. About 5 months later, my brother and sister got adopted by another family, and I decided to live with my aunt. Throughout this time, I struggled a bit because I was so close to my little brother and sister, and I didn't want to be split apart from them. When I was staying with my aunt, we attended this church very frequently, and she even taught at the preschool. Soon, I got very attached to my aunt, and me and my cousin got along very well. I remember one afternoon coming home from school, and my aunt asked me how would I feel if she adopted me. I got so happy because she explained that she could be my mom, so she adopted me. After a few months went by, I was at home, and my uncle was babysitting me. On this day, he asked me if I died, if I knew where I would go, and I said no, and then I began to cry. On this day, I asked the Lord to come into my heart and save me from my sins. I remember telling everyone God was in my heart, and I was so excited. But a little more than a year went by, and then my mom got married. We moved and eventually stopped attending church. This was a huge turning point in my life. I became very bitter, and I felt alone once again. My stepmom totally changed, and our family began to break apart again. Soon, she and my stepdad got a divorce, and we moved to Kentucky. This destroyed me and my stepbrother. At the time, all I could do was trust in the Lord and hope He had a better plan. After a few years of living in Kentucky, my stepmom had a massive change. She was always gone, and once again, I had no one. I felt so alone. My older stepbrother was always with his friends. Then my stepmom decided to move again. This time we moved to a bad neighborhood and I felt abandoned. My mom left for a few days and then more days, and when she would return home, she would leave the next morning. Eventually, I got sick of it. I contacted my family here in North Carolina and they came to pick me up for a visit. I automatically became detached. I got to see my brother and sister again. It was amazing. God had answered my prayer. While I visited a friend, A friend convinced me to go to this youth conference, and this conference was another huge turning point in my life. At Mid-Atlantic Youth Conference 2015, I decided to stay and live with my family in North Carolina. I felt so welcomed, and I was able to go to the same church and school I attended before I got adopted by my aunt. All of the loneliness went away. I got involved in my amazing youth group and made many amazing friends. My best friend even helped me get reassurance in my salvation. This was the best decision I'd ever made. I learned overall it may seem like you are alone, but it's all a part of God's big plan for your life. So when you feel like you're alone, talk to God. He can take that loneliness away. You may feel alone, but with God, you are never alone.